you show up there at that training, and every single dude who gets picked up for that training has been in the top quarter or better with everything. So the caliber is here, the competition is here.
The difference between a team and a group.
Very politely, I had to just say, like, hey, I'm happy to help you all out. I'm happy to work with you, but you got to be clear, you're not a team. Like, you guys are a group, and you're a high-functioning group, and you're all good people, but this is not a team. Psychological differences being in a group, being a team. Calling someone your teammate, something goes with that, and it matters. The background in the SEAL teams, I think, is so different than anybody else. I mean, knew a guy who was, raised in a cult, knew a guy who ran away from the circus to join the military. There's a point where we're over on deployment and just going out night after night. I mean, the peak's 90-day deployment, going out 75 nights, multiple missions in the same night, sometimes 3 missions in the same night. Like, we were that busy.
Jon Fussell, welcome to the Pathway to Peak Performance. So good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, man, good to be here.
How you been?
Doing well, plugging away.
Excellent. So, we always have a charity for the show and the guest picks. And I believe you said yours is Children of Valor, which used to be SEAL Kids. You want to talk a little bit about what they do?
Sure. The, lots of great philanthropic work being done for supporting the military in all sorts of ways. SEAL Kids were started, I believe, about 14 years ago. And with the name SEAL Kids, it was to support the children of all Navy SEALs and all things educational. And they've had a great run, and recently it got to the point where they wanted to expand to all of special operations. So, they didn't want to exclude Green Berets, Army Rangers, anything like that. So they dropped the SEAL Kids, and now it's Children of Valor. Same mission, all things educational for kids. So Army Rangers, Green Berets, Air Force guys, MARSOC, you name it. Need some tutoring, need some testing. It's a great organization.
Yeah, doing great work. Yeah, good stuff happening. So, all right, Jon. You know the story. We're going all the way back to where it starts, what motivated you. And, you said something to me at one point in time that I really appreciated, but like the pathway to peak performance is really about sustainability, and someone who's operated at a level that you have. I think that's a really insightful statement, that notion of, the peaks and the valleys, and also about what's sustainable over time.
Yeah.
So, let's go back. Let's talk about childhood and where you're from and all of those good things.
So let's see, one of 4 kids. I always thought I had the sweet spot. I had an older brother, older sister, a little brother. And so I wasn't the oldest, the youngest, or the only girl. So I was kind of the gray man. I think I was a really good position. Chose that one wisely. And, grew up, had a lot of military service in my family. Nobody made a career of it. My dad was a Green Beret. Uncle was a Navy SEAL. Grandfather fought World War II. A couple Marines running around, some cousins. So, it was always out there. It didn't really define anybody though. So, everybody kind of did their piece and moved on. So it was always in the background. And I grew up wrestling, wrestled all through high school and college, and just kind of got the bug about halfway through college. I think I'm going to go serve. I'm going to serve when I wrap up college. And so I started doing my homework on what I could do. And, and the next thing you know, I'm trying out for SEAL training.
Yeah, it is saying that you grew up in Virginia Beach, so you had it, and you went to Old Dominion, so you had it you're around it. You've got it in and around you, and there's a culture associated with that. It's probably given you some good vision as to where you might want to go. Talk a little bit about that, if you would. What kind of got you into that spot where you thought, hey, that's the direction I want to head?
Yeah, I wrestled all through college, and then got into rock climbing in college. I ended up meeting some guys in the SEAL teams through rock climbing, and really just liked the mentality. It was late 90s. We weren't at war. So God bless everybody who signed up, after we were at war. My generation, we signed up to give it a go and hopefully get gainfully employed. But I liked the mentality. I liked the reminding me of my wrestling teams, and I knew I wanted to serve anyway. I was like, well, if you're going to put yourself in harm's way, you should probably surround yourself with the best people you possibly can. And so for me, that led to the SEAL teams.
Yeah. And so you've described BUDS as you described boot camp as like that's light duty. BUDS maybe not so much. I think one time you said like, hey, it doesn't really matter if you go in springtime or wintertime, because they're going to figure out how to get you hypothermic one way or the other. And so you go through buds. What was the most challenging thing you found in buds?
You know, if you look at the whole thing, it's a monster. It's like how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time, and but there's no single evolution that's really insurmountable. It's just so much. It's nonstop the whole time. As far as things that were physically hard, I was always an okay swimmer. I didn't swim competitively, but for the non, there was the competitive swimmers and then the rest of us. I was at the top kind of group for the guys that weren't real swimmers. I always did fine swimming. I had lifeguard all through high school and college. Um, Swimming wasn't that hard. Running was okay. I wasn't a great runner, but it wasn't bad. The obstacle course, the O course, kind of came natural to me. I was pretty good at the O course. Um, but I mean, the great equalizer of SEAL training is that it's just the cold water. I mean, the Pacific Ocean doesn't care, and it's chilly year round. So that's kind of that's what weeds everybody out.
Yeah, and being sandy and chafed, for a long periods of time.
It's pretty brutal.
I guess also being at the bottom of the pool and having somebody trying to take off all your gear and mess you up and then get you back on.
Yeah, I mean, the pool comp. I'm sure you can go online and see images of that stuff going on. It's just Buds is getting guys. The SEALs make their money by being problem solvers, and when the stakes are high and the pressure's high, if you can't keep your cool, you can't solve problems. And so it's just that Buds is in a lot of ways it's the infancy that's going to get you to that process. And you need to figure out who can keep their head. They've taught you all the procedures. You got to go down and take your tanks off, do all these procedures, do them exactly right, attention to detail. With limited air, you've just exhaled all your air, and now you're taking these tanks off underwater. If you do it all right, by the way they taught you, calmly, and stop panicking about the fact that you really want some air right now, you'll get through it. And the guys that can't stay calm, they don't make it.
Yeah, you're gonna freak out. So people think that once you go through buds, uh, they stamp you and you're a SEAL. And that's maybe not a story that we should tell today.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it's so initial SEAL training, if everything goes as planned and you get straight through, it's about 6 months. And typical class, I classed up with like 178 and graduated with 28. That's pretty standard numbers. And that's step one. They changed it back in the day. We went through a different training after that, but now there's SEAL qualification training. So you get through Buds, you're hard as nails, never going to quit. But you don't know anything at all about being a SEAL. And then they send them, the young guys, to SEAL qualification training, which is about 9 months. And that's world-class training, like really, really good training. You finish that, that's when you're officially a SEAL at that point. And then you get sent to your first SEAL team, and then you'll form up a SEAL platoon, and then you'll go through an entire workup, probably 18 months worth of a workup cycle, before you're going to be going overseas doing the job.
Yeah, and I mean, you make your first team, and then it doesn't mean that you're going to stick. It doesn't mean that you're going to stay.
I think the average career span is like 5.5 years opposed to Buds, something like that. It's pretty short. It's a demanding life. The most of the guys, the vast majority of guys that do graduate Buds and become SEALs, get to the SEAL teams, and they make it. A handful will go away for you just can't keep up, or they do dumb stuff and get in trouble. But the majority are going to at least get a platoon or two in, and then there's another sort of exit point there about at the 4, 5, 6 year mark where guys like you really want to stick around and do this for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of just hardcore stuff that you're doing that talk about the swim from Catalina.
Yeah, the infamous boogeyman swim. That's always kind of a fun evolution. It's been going on for years. It's towards the tail end of SEAL training. You're out at San Clemente Island. They say the island where no one can hear you scream. And that's just the final month for the instructors to really put the screws to everybody. But when you show up there, one of the rites of passage is the boogeyman swim, which is a nighttime swim, pitch black. They've just explained how dangerous of an area it is for sharks and things like that. So, but it's kind of a classic. Everyone has great stories. I mean, it's pretty much, I'm sure it's historically the fastest swim of all time. Good guys just want to get out of the water, even the slow swimmers are putting out. So,
yeah, man, that's the real deal.
Yeah. Even though it's kind of funny, haha, and all that, but it goes to like, hey man, there's things that are out of your control. Don't waste your energy worrying on them. Yeah, there are things that are out of your control that can actually kill you in that line of work. Yes, understand that, but it's out of my control. So I'm not going to waste any energy thinking about it. Just get the swim done and move on with your life.
Yeah. focus on what you can do and make it happen. All right. So you moved around some teams. And so what's your first team?
I started off at no, so the even teams are on the East Coast. I had odds are out here in San Diego, and I started off at SEAL Team 4, which was my first choice, and we got really lucky to get it. And back then, my opinion was that was the best place to be. A couple other guys might make some arguments otherwise, but SEAL Team 4 covered all South America, so closest in the late '90s to being somewhat gainfully employed compared to, you know, not that going to Germany and skiing with the Germans wasn't a blast, but they weren't doing much. So
And there was some activity down in
yeah, working with the FARC, working against the FARC with the special forces in Colombia and things like that.
yeah, that was kind of a interesting time.
Yeah, that was I got there just after we got Pablo Escobar. So
Yeah. And considering what just took place down not too far from
yeah,
there.
interesting times.
Interesting times. Yeah. But from there you move on and you go in actually enlisted.
Yep.
And at some point in time you decide to take a commission. Talk about that transition. Because this is now, you're going in, you wanted to go in enlisted, even though you were a college graduate, you could have gone to OCS and just rolled that way, but you decided to go the enlisted route first.
Well, like I said, I met some guys through rock climbing, and just luck of the draw, the guys that I happened to meet were senior enlisted guys. One guy was a prior, he was a commissioned officer, but prior enlisted guy. And their advice to me was, hey, just go in enlisted, learn it from the deck plates up. If you decide you want to get a commission, you can do that later. If you become an officer and you find out that you'd rather be enlisted, you can't do it. They can't go in that direction. So I just kind of took that advice, and I only did about 5 years enlisted, and I got picked up a little bit earlier than I expected to. But got picked up and went through Officer Candidate School, OCS. Got my commission. They make you change teams. I came out to San Diego, went to SEAL Team 3, kicked things off as an officer. So I ended up doing 15 years as an officer.
Yeah, that's a long time. And then you move around a little bit, right? You're doing some different things, but um, there's a higher level, and you went there. So
Yeah, I hit a couple places first. I was when I became an officer, it's to move up to the people have heard of development group, dev group, Capture Phillips, Bin Laden, things like that. That's kind of the top level for the SEAL teams. You got to be in for about 5, 6, 7, 8 years, somewhere in that window. It's when guys put in a package interview to go on. I was approaching that window when I decided to go get a commission, which for me meant that I was resetting my clock because officers get picked up for that around the 8 year mark. So I went back to day one and I had 8 more years to catch up. So um, I ended up doing 7 before I got back over there as an officer. So I went to Team 3, got there. Timing was really good because again, I've been in the teams for about 5 years, kind of had my feet under me a little bit. And a hot minute later, 9/11 went down. So we suddenly were just busy right there. We deployed 12 days after the attacks. And that was the early wave of OEF. We ended up doing a bunch of ship porting. We actually didn't get into Afghanistan on that deployment, but still pretty busy deployment. Came back from that. They were standing up a couple new SEAL teams at that point. SEAL teams 10 and 7 were getting stood up. And so I decided to come back to the East Coast. I went to Team 10. I got to be a plank owner, which is basically an original company. Got to be a plank owner at Team 10. Went to Afghanistan with Team 10. That was 03, winter of 03, 04. Came back from that. Went back to my alma mater. Went back to Team 4 again. Did my platoon commander tour there. And we went to Iraq for that one. And then I did a brief stretch. It was 2 teams that do mini subs, just all underwater stuff. So I did a brief stretch at SDB Team 2 before I had the opportunity to move up.
yeah. The one thing maybe you could explain to people is like what it's like to be underwater all day long.
Yeah, SDB is it's an amazing. I mean, Google a picture of it, it'll pop right up. But can't get into all the technical stuff on it. But it's a wet sub, so you're on scuba inside the sub. Not very big. It's not spacious, and so when you're in that thing, you and the pilot and navigator are crammed in a pretty tight space together, and cabin closes, sub floods, and you're in there. Got to keep yourself organized because you're on scuba, and not a great place to have a problem while scuba in a pitch black, closed box underwater. And but yeah, you can stay down for quite a while. And that's a long, long day. That's a tough job. The guys that do that, that are really good at it are, hats off. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's
I did a brief stretch. I was there for just over a year. Glad I learned it.
only a year.
Yeah, I was glad I learned it. Glad I learned. No, I have friends that did decades there. I'm glad I'm glad I learned it, and then I'm glad I got to get out of there.
Yeah. Also, like some of the jumps you made, right? You're probably glad that those were that didn't have to do those over and over and over and over.
I enjoyed the jumping piece. I mean, we tend to beat the fun out of everything. By the time you get up there and you're doing a high jump or you're pre-breathing, you're carrying all your equipment, you got oxygen, you're carrying a lot of weight, and eventually all you want to do is just jump off that ramp and just get that weight off of you, even though it's going to be negative 80 degrees um, but I enjoyed the jumping, I have a few hundred jumps. I have friends that were thousands and thousands of jumps. So
Yeah, that's a whole nother level. A long way down. So, all right, you get to this spot. So there's SOCOM and there's JSOC. And where you wind up is in the higher level. And that's a super intense environment, with, lots of stuff you cannot talk about. So, let's talk about the intensity. And at any point in time along the way, did you ever think to yourself, I'm not sure I want to continue to do this? Any of that ever come out for you, or were you just so dialed in?
oh no, the want was, no, 100% always there. I knew, from the time I came in, that's the path to go to, and
But you saw guys along the way that you saw the want go out, right?
not really at that, maybe a little bit at that level. Like when you class up for that, I was never the number one guy on anything, but I would like to say I was, at the SEAL teams, I was consistently in the top quarter on most stuff, and you show up there at that training, and every single dude who gets picked up for that training has been in the top quarter or better with everything. So the caliber is here, the competition is here, and some guys, it was too much. They stress out. Maybe the want wanes a little bit for some guys, but most guys not making it through that's just just getting overwhelmed by just too much coming at you. The learning curve's too fast.
Yeah, you've been in it for a long time. You've got a lot of experience. You can't go any higher. So it's about as good as it gets. And it's it's like a critical thing.
To get there, I mean, if you've been running and gunning and being a top dog at your team for several years, and you get there and you just can't even keep up. It starts very humbling. It's very humbling. So
Yeah. I mean, that's just a whole nother level. So, oftentimes people talk about peak performance and it's like, oh, peak performance within, business or medicine or whatever. Peak performance in your world is a high stakes, it's life or death. And one wrong move and a lot of bad things can happen quickly. Talk about flow state a lot in the show. I'm curious, like there's organizational flow state. You're working together as a team.
Mhm.
One of the things I love that you say, that you talk a lot about is the difference between a team and a group. Let's get into that.
Yeah, I kind of came up and do some consulting here and there and talk with some people, and I had after about the 50th person was like, hey, will you come in and sit down and talk to our team, talk to our team, talk to our team. Finally, just one day, very politely, I had to just say like, hey, I'm happy to help y'all out. I'm happy to work with you, but you got to be clear, you're not a team. Like you guys are a group, and you're a high functioning group, and you're all good people, but this is not a team. And there's differences. There's psychological differences of being in a group, being a team. Calling someone your teammate, something goes with that, and it matters. So nothing against groups. There's great groups. If you look at an org chart of the military, you'll see plenty of groups, plenty of really high functioning groups that do great stuff. But the closer and closer you get to the bullets flying, the more you're going to see the word team. Fire teams. That's where the rubber meets the road. It's about being a team, and that's where that kind of came from.
Yeah. So when someone's thinking about a life in the military, whether that's, whatever branch it might be,
Hmm.
Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, if they're thinking about like, heading in that direction, to be, in the world that you operated in, what are the things like, people always So what should I be doing to prepare for that? And I like what you say about that. Um, Talk about it, will you?
While we're preparing for buds,
Yeah.
I said preparing for buds is like preparing for a bag over the head punch in the face. Like you can't warm up for that one. You know, it's gonna hurt, right? And so just
Yeah.
be fit, be healthy, get out there and just roll with it. As far as young folks coming, looking to come and join the military, a lot of great stuff, a lot of great opportunities in the military. A lot of, all parents out there are often like freaking out. Oh my God, my kid's gonna join the military. They're definitely gonna die. Like the tiniest fraction of people in the military go to combat. I couldn't even know what the percentage is, but it's incredibly small. So you got to go out of your way. If you got to be like a triple volunteer to end up in combat in the first place. And if you had no interest in combat and you're finishing up high school and you're like, hey, college might not be for me, but I'm pretty good mechanic and I'm gonna go join the army and be a mechanic and get extra training and get some money and get the GI Bill and come out and do my thing, or learn to take it from being an automotive mechanic to cranking wrenches on an aircraft. Next thing you know, you're working for an airline doing great. So there's a lot of great little trades that you can get picked up, even if you do a 4-year stretch, you're a young guy coming in.
Yeah.
But I tell people all the time, like if you're coming in, just do your homework. Just do your homework. Think about what it is you want to do. There are all kinds of jobs. The military is an entire society. Like there's, you want to run a desalinization plant? They got, right? I mean, there's all kinds of stuff in the military. Figure out what it is you want to do. Look at the various branches. Who's going to afford you the best opportunity. Also look at where you might end up living. 4 years isn't that long of a stretch. 4 years seems like an eternity when you're 17 years old, because that's about a third of the time that you can remember on this planet, but it's a quick stretch, 4 years. But do your homework. Like, hey, go pull out a map of the US and be like, oh, this is where all the Army forts are. Do you love turkey hunting? Good. Go for the Army. Like, that's where you're gonna end up. Like, don't be fooled by the Navy. You start circling where all the Navy bases are. You're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Yes, yeah, you're not gonna be there. You're gonna be on that big gray boat floating around the world. You're not gonna be living in San Diego and Hawaii and so, but do your homework.
Yeah. When it comes to flow state and getting into it, do you feel like when you're in that kind of environment, like your team environment, so much of that is just reps, right? You've done it so many times. It's like you just kind of get into a rhythm and you know exactly where you're going to go and what you're going to do. Individual flow state today for you, as you sort of enter that and things are kind of working and everything's just coming together. Is there any kind of magic powder, any magic dust to that?
I don't think anything too crazy. I mean, it's very different nowadays for me being retired and everything, but certainly there's a point where we're over on deployment and just going out night after night. I mean, the peaks in 2006, 7, 8, 9. I mean, we were so busy. 90-day deployment, going out 75 nights, multiple missions in the same night. Sometimes 3 missions in the same night. Like, we were that busy. At that point, everybody just knows everything about each other. The way guys walk, the way guys move. Everybody anticipates everything because you're just doing so much work together. Nowadays, flow state for me is like one of my most affected, one of my getting my most work done, really. I like to keep a decent workout routine. I think that for me, I find that about 90 minutes after I exercise is my window, and I got about a 3-hour window where I can really crush. And then I start to drift off, but that's my window as far as getting in the flow, getting stuff done. And if I could shut off email alerts and put my phone away, like that's when I can just crank out some work.
I always have to get up pretty early to catch you in the gym. Okay. The reality is that today you are pretty busy guy in high demand. And that's another thing that I think people should probably realize is that, like what you said about all of the other you know, MOSs, whatever it is that you want to call it, occupations, you have come to a place in time where people are hiring you to speak to their groups, to teach them things about leadership and how to function as a team, et cetera, how to make decisions, tough decisions in really difficult situations. Do you find that work to be super exciting?
Well, you've been through my course, one of my courses. When we teach, I really enjoy them. So it's fun. We try to get people out of their wheelhouse, talk through some scenario type things, put them in real scenarios like, hey, what would you do in this situation? How would you handle this? How would you troubleshoot for this? Ethical dilemmas, lesser of two evils all day long. And it's not about armchair quarterbacking. It's just about, hey, this is what happened. These are the real decisions, the real outcomes of these things. This is how it unfolded. Imagine put yourself in that situation. I taught the session that you went through. I tell people all the time, we prepare for all this stuff. Who hasn't rehearsed a pitch that they had to give on Monday, or said, hey, honey, I got to give this speech on Tuesday of this finals pitch. Can you listen to what I got? Like everybody, we all do that, prepare. But when you ask a group of professionals, like, hey, when was the last time you role played or war gamed out, something that went completely sideways, or an ethical dilemma? And nobody does,
Yeah.
So for all the things that we prepare for, to just say you're going to shoot from the hip on that one and you'll figure it out, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah. Another thing you always say that I like is, the notion of hot wash and then after action, and really like you hot wash even on success, right? Like, hey, we won. So what were the components that went into that so that we can actually document that and recreate that as much as possible? And then, really plan it all the way out. So many people just don't do that.
Yeah. They don't see, human nature, you go through, everybody's been there. If you're at any kind of youth organization, when something goes south, bring it in. Let's talk about that. What happened? Not gonna let that happen again. And everybody's been at that table, and debrief those. But when we knock one out of the park and it goes great, we're human, and we tend not to. Everybody just wants to give each other high fives and drive on with your day, and we tend not to debrief those, which is why you got to debrief them all. No matter how well it went, you will find something that could have been just a little bit better, and sharing that, and sharing that, and sharing that.
To have the humility to come to that with an open mind and actually hear it, and then want to actually make that adjustment, which I think in the world that you operated in, that was sort of like, hey, you got to do that, because otherwise, if you don't, bad stuff can happen. Or, hey, we can learn how to do that one a little bit better and get it done faster. And when you're that busy, when you're going out 3 times a night, that's kind of crazy. That's exhausting, right? And you got to be on point nonstop. We're the same age, and am I a year older? I think I'm a year older than you are. Yeah, so you're younger than I am. But can I talk about your rank?
But yeah, retired as lieutenant commander.
Yeah, that's the highest. Well, talk about it.
That's middle management.
But for in field, that's the highest you'd get.
Yeah. So most, the way, in the military, most of your troops that are in the field are being led by senior enlisted and junior officers. It's just structured that way. We don't want to, even though some super capable admirals and generals are running around, you don't want a guy with 35 years of his life invested making a split-second decision about someone living and dying, because that guy's like thinking about his job at Lockheed Martin next month and his retirement and his book tour. Like, he's got, you take the guy who's 4 years out of West Point and he just wants to get all his buddies home alive. He's going to be aggressive and do so that you're not going to have those people in those cities. So yeah, I say middle management. The battlefield is run by relatively junior guys, which is where I spent some time.
But you're the guy that's on the phone and they're calling into, and you're calling the ball. And that
was a ground force commander. Like I was guy, coordinating a lot of, you're out on every mission. You're right there on the ground leading the mission, but you're kind of towards the back of the group, and you got the command and control element, got a Air Force guy here, radio guy here, a couple other enablers doing stuff for you. And yeah, you're talking to a lot of, or you're asking someone to talk to the aircraft for us, get this done, line this up, tell that element to move over here, that kind of stuff.
There's a real rhythm to that. It's pretty intense. And when your life's on the line, and your buddies' lives are on the line, your teammates' lives are on the line, you got to get it right. I want to ask you about stuff that is tough, but I don't know that we should go there. So the tough stuff that I want to ask you about is like, what happens when it doesn't go right?
Yeah.
And, you could talk about that, or you could just skip it.
No, when things not everything's going to go perfectly. I've had plenty of things that did not go great. And that's really about resilience. You got to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and get back after it. You lose, lost guys. We lost a lot of friends in combat. You can't, you got to step back, objectively located take where you're doing things the way you should have been doing, because or we always say the enemy gets a vote, you know, and if you dissect it and you're like, hey, we were doing some dumb stuff, we lost somebody, that's hard pill to swallow. But if you step back and look at it objectively, you're like, no, we did everything we could have done. What got him was beyond our control. You know, it was a crush wire buried. Who could have possibly foreseen that? You know, so you just got to look at it objectively and then drive on with the job.
Yep. So we talk about all the things that, hey, could go wrong and this, that, and the other thing. What's the funniest thing you ever saw in the Navy?
Oh my God. Oh, you should give me some time to think about that. There's so many. I mean, I think it's like, without getting graphic, people falling down. You know, Chevy Chase made an entire career of stumbling and knocking stuff over. People falling down at the wrong moments is always funny. Bodily functions. Someone have to use the bathroom when they the most inopportune possible time. That stuff happens. You know, we're human, and that I think that was not that you want to watch that or you saw it, but you know that it occurred when someone finishes an op and they're missing a sock. You know, you're like, man, that was a rough night for you. So that kind of stuff. And I mean, just the group of guys, the guys in the SEAL teams. Yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot of dark humor for sure. Obviously, because you'll find the same thing in law enforcement, and firefighters, and nurses and doctors. But it's I mean, there's some hysterical human beings in that, and it's such a weird. The background in the SEAL teams, I think, is so different than anybody else. I mean, knew a guy who was raised in a cult. Knew a guy who ran away from the circus to join the military. Not ran away to join the circus. Ran away from the circus to join the military.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy melting pot of bull riders and guys that end up going to NASA and they're astronauts. So it's crazy.
Yeah. You've known a lot of really interesting people along the way. That's for sure.
Yeah,
right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Face of warfare, modern warfare is changing dramatically.
Yeah.
It is going to be a whole another ball game. We're seeing it right now unfold. It's pretty intense these days. We're shooting this right now in 2000 or what is it, 2026?
Yep.
Can't believe I'm like I want to say 2006, but it's 2026. Here we are, and man, it's going to be. The world seems more bananas than it's ever seen.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah. Well, man, it's great to have you in. So appreciate you coming from Virginia Beach to sit down with us and talk. And always great to see you, my man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. We'll see ya.
Hey, thanks everyone for watching the show. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us out here at the channel, and share the video with someone who might be interested in supporting the charity that our guest mentioned in the episode. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.